Today we're going to take a deep dive into something kind of crazy. We're looking into a potential scandal with Tata Consultancy Services. You might know them as TCS. And yeah, it's about how they've been handling U.S. work visas. It's got all the drama of like a corporate thriller. I know, accusations of fraud, a global tech giant, maybe even some international intrigue. Sounds like a movie. Yeah. Anyway, our main source for this deep dive is a Slashdot article. It breaks down a whole Bloomberg News investigation into TCS. And we're also going to be looking at some of the comments on Slashdot, just to kind of get a feel for how people are reacting to all this.
Yeah, what I think is really interesting here is that it's not just about what one company might have done. I mean, this whole case really opens up a much bigger conversation about the visa system itself, especially when it comes to these skilled worker visas.
Exactly. So by the end of this deep dive, you'll understand way more about how these visas work, why they're so controversial, and what it all means for the global tech workforce. Plus, some of the stuff people are saying in those Slashdot comments.
Yeah.
You just won't believe it.
Yeah, the range of perspectives is pretty fascinating.
So to set the stage a little bit, the Bloomberg report claims that TCS has been manipulating the U.S. visa system, specifically the L1A visa program. They've been using it to bring in a huge number of foreign workers.
And this is where it gets a little technical. Most people have heard of the H-1B visa, right? It's for skilled workers, and it has those yearly limits. But the L1A is different. It's specifically for moving executives or managers within the same company, and it doesn't have those same limits as the H-1B.
Okay, so a company like TCS, with big offices in India, they could use the L1A to bring their managers over to the U.S. without having to worry about those H-1B caps.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And the Bloomberg report uses lawsuits and federal data to suggest that TCS might be taking advantage of this system. They supposedly got over 6,500 L1A visas between 2019 and 2023. That's more than the next 7 biggest companies combined.
Wow, that's a crazy number. But get this. A federal report from 2022, it shows that TCS only classified less than 600 of its 31,000 U.S. employees as executives or managers. That's a huge difference.
It is, and that's one of the things that's really fueled these accusations. Why would a company need to bring in thousands of workers on visas meant for managers if only a tiny fraction of their workforce are actually managers?
Yeah, that does seem a little fishy. And it gets even more complicated because there's this former TCS manager named Anil Kani, and he filed a lawsuit. He claims that he was actually told to change organizational charts. Like he was asked to make it look like more employees had management roles than they actually did.
And on top of that, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC, they also found what they called credible documentary evidence that TCS often falsifies documents for those L1 visa applications.
Wow, so they're really in trouble then.
Yeah. These are pretty serious allegations, no doubt about it. But we should mention that TCS has completely denied any wrongdoing. They put out a statement saying they totally disagree with the claims, and they say it's just disgruntled former employees making these accusations.
All right, so we've got some serious accusations flying around, a company pushing back hard, and a whole bunch of questions. So I guess the big question is, what would make a company potentially go to such lengths to game the system like this?
That's a great question. And to understand that, I think we need to take a closer look at why a company might choose to use the L1A visa program instead of just going with the H-1B route. And maybe even more importantly, we need to look at the potential consequences of these choices for both the companies and the workers involved.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so let's get into that. We'll be right back after a short break.
Okay, so let's dive back in. So we were talking about companies bringing in skilled workers from other countries. Why would they go through all the trouble of maybe messing with the L1A program instead of just using the H-1B visas?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, one big difference is the cost. The L1A visa doesn't have specific salary requirements. But for the H-1B, the companies have to pay the going rate for that job in that area. So they could save a lot of money by using the L1A visas instead. So basically, they could hire someone from overseas on an L1A visa and pay them way less than they would have to pay an American worker for the same job.
Yeah, that's a major concern for people who are critical of the L1A program. They argue that this cost advantage makes companies want to hire foreign workers over Americans, and that could end up lowering wages for everyone in that field.
Which brings us to those Slashdot comments.
Yeah.
It's like a raw, unfiltered look at how people are reacting to all this.
Yeah, it's a really interesting snapshot of public opinion. And as you might expect, there are some strong opinions on both sides.
For sure. Some of the comments I read were pretty surprising. Some people were saying this kind of visa manipulation is super common. especially with Indian staffing firms.
Right. A lot of the comments made it seem like it's an open secret in the industry. They talk about how much less IT workers get paid in India compared to the US. And that makes sense. It gives both Indian and American companies a big reason to try to bring in cheaper labor.
So are they saying that companies are basically exploiting this loophole to get an advantage over their competitors by cutting labor costs?
Yeah, that seems to be the main idea, especially for the people who believe this kind of thing is happening all over the place. And some comments went even further. They were accusing TCS of doing some shady and possibly illegal stuff. Some people felt like TCS's whole business model is about using up employees quickly, focusing on short-term profits instead of investing in their workers long-term.
Right. And a lot of people were also talking about the impact on American workers.
Definitely. A lot of the comments were worried that all these foreign workers coming in on L1A visas are making wages go down and taking jobs away from American tech workers.
I mean, that's a valid point. If companies can fill those jobs with people who are willing to work for less money, it makes sense that it could hurt everyone's pay in that industry.
Yeah. And some people even went as far as to call it slave labor, saying that those workers on visas are easy to take advantage of because they're only here temporarily and they're afraid of getting sent back home.
Man, it's a tough situation. No easy answers. On the one hand, you've got companies saying they need to hire people from all over the world to stay competitive in a global economy.
Right. They say if there are too many restrictions on skilled worker visas, it could actually hurt the U.S. economy in the long run.
But then on the other hand, people are worried that these programs could be abused, leading to lower wages, job losses, and even exploitation of workers. It's tough to find the right balance.
It really is. And the conversation goes way beyond just TCS and the L1A program. Some people were saying we've been focusing too much on the H-1B visas and that the L-1 visas with no caps and fewer requirements need more attention, maybe even stricter rules.
So they're saying the L1 program could be even easier to exploit than the H-1B. And that one's already been debated a ton.
Yeah.
It really makes you think, this whole situation is about more than just one company. It's about a global workforce, the future of work, and how companies deal with all these super complicated issues.
Right, in this case. Whether or not those accusations against TCS are true, it really highlights how connected all these things are. It makes us ask some tough questions about how we manage a global workforce in a way that's fair and sustainable for everyone.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the bigger picture, doesn't it? I mean, we're talking about a global workforce, the future of work, and how companies are dealing with these really complicated issues.
Exactly. And this case, whether or not TCS is actually guilty of anything, it shows just how intertwined all these issues are. It brings up some fundamental questions about how we manage a global workforce in a way that's fair and works for everyone.
Like we've pulled back the curtain and seen this whole web of economic forces and technological advancements in people's lives all tied together by this system that's meant to bring skilled workers to where they're needed.
And it's a system that's always changing, especially with how fast technology is developing. Think about it as automation and AI get more advanced. The demand for certain skills is going to change drastically. Some jobs will disappear, new ones will pop up, and these changes are going to affect workers all over the world.
That makes sense. So how do we prepare for that future? I mean, if we're already seeing these tensions and potential for exploitation with the current system, how do we make sure that a globalized workforce is truly fair and beneficial for everyone as technology keeps changing the world of work?
That's the big question, isn't it? And there's no simple answer. But I think it starts with realizing that we need more transparency and accountability in the system. Companies need to be held responsible for making sure they're not taking advantage of workers or driving down wages just to get ahead.
So more oversight and stricter rules.
Maybe. But it's not just about regulations. We need a bigger conversation about the ethics of a global workforce. What are the responsibilities of companies to ensure fair treatment and working conditions for all their employees, no matter where they're from or what their visa status is?
It's a complex issue with no easy solutions. But this deep dive has definitely shown some of the major challenges we face in a world where work is becoming more global and technology is changing faster than ever before.
It has. And perhaps the most important thing to remember is that we need to keep talking about this and thinking critically. We need to keep asking these tough questions, looking at the potential consequences of our choices, and working towards a future of work that benefits everyone.
This deep dive has been quite a journey from allegations of corporate misconduct to broader discussions about globalization and the future of work. It's given us all a lot to think about.
It has, and I think it reminds us that even in the technical world of visas and regulations, there are human stories. These policies affect real people's lives, and we have to consider those impacts as we try to make sense of this complex landscape.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've given our listeners plenty to ponder. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.